The awakening. The boardroom was cold, the kind of sterile luxury that screamed power and wealth. I had never been in a room like this before, never imagined my life would lead me here. Yet here I stood, facing him. The millionaire, the man whose words are the weight to crush dreams, and who, yesterday, had called me useless. He lounged in his leather chair, fingers drumming impatiently on the polished mahogany table. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned me like I was a bug he could crush with the flick of a hand. "Do you even know what you're capable of?" he asked, his voice calm but venomous. "Or are you just another empty suit pretending to matter?" I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay composed. Every fiber of my body screamed to shrink, to apologize, to vanish. But I had learned long ago that shrinking never changes anything. I know my worth," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He leaned forward, smirk curling on his lips. "Worth? You? Worthless is the more accurate word. Do you really think anyone will take you seriously in this world?" The room fell silent. The assistants, executives, and investors, all of them, were waiting for me to crack, to beg for mercy, to admit defeat. But I didn't. I swallowed my fear and met his gaze. "I don't think anyone else gets to define my worth," I said. A nervous chuckle ran through the room. The millionaire's smirk faltered. That tiny crack in his armor thrilled me in a way I couldn't explain. After the meeting, I left the building feeling both hollow and alive. Hollow because of his words. Alive because I had survived them without crumbling. That night, I replayed every insult, every dismissive glance. Useless, worthless, invisible. And as I lay on my couch staring at the ceiling, a thought began to form. Tomorrow I will prove him wrong. Not just with words, but with action. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The city was quiet, almost expectant, as if it too was holding its breath for what I was about to do. I didn't go back to that office. I didn't make calls or appointments. Instead, I sat at my laptop and began typing. I wrote about my life, about the countless times people had underestimated me, about the nights I worked 2 jobs to survive, about the skills I had honed in silence while the world ignored me. And then I told the story of what had happened in that boardroom, how a millionaire had called me useless. I published it on a small blog I had started months ago and sent the link to a handful of trusted friends. By noon, the post had gone viral. People were sharing it across social media, adding their own stories of being underestimated or ignored. By evening, journalists had picked up the story. The hashtag #uselessblackman started trending. I sat back in disbelief. Something I had done quietly, almost as a personal exercise, was now being seen and heard by thousands, maybe millions. The next days were a whirlwind. I started receiving messages from people all over the country. Some were simple. "Thank you for speaking. I've been called useless too." Others were more intense. "We need to organize. People like us should not be ignored." I began reaching out to people, innovators, entrepreneurs, artists, all of us overlooked by a system that judged us by color, background, or wealth. We formed a network, a collective of voices that refused to be silenced. Meanwhile, the millionaire remained oblivious. He thought a viral post was just a fleeting nuisance. He didn't understand that this wasn't noise. This was the spark of something much bigger. By the end of the week, mainstream media picked up the story. Headlines read, "Millionaire under fire after calling black employee useless. Sparks national debate on racism and power." But not everyone was supportive. That night, an unknown number sent me a text. "You've started something you can't control. Be careful. People are watching." Fear crept in, but it was overshadowed by adrenaline. I had faced fear before. I had survived insults, dismissal, and prejudice. This was just another challenge. I realized something crucial. This was no longer about proving him wrong. This was about proving to the world and to myself that I mattered, that my voice mattered, that I was not and would never be useless. The following week, I organized a small gathering in a local community center. 10 people at first, then 20, then 50. Each of us shared stories, skills, and strategies. We created a movement without a name yet, just a collective refusal to accept the label society tried to pin on us. Then, a week later, the first backlash came. Someone leaked a manipulated video of me at the gathering, edited to make it seem like I had threatened the millionaire. The story spread like wildfire, and my inbox filled with threats, anonymous warnings, and messages of support. I realized I had entered a battlefield, one I couldn't avoid. And yet, for the first time in my life, I felt alive. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for every person who had ever been underestimated, ignored, or silenced. And I was ready to go further than anyone, even the millionaire, could imagine. One rainy evening, a small envelope arrived at my apartment. Inside was a photograph of me leaving the building that day, taken from a distance. On the back, a single line was written, "You've started a fire. Now watch how high it will burn." I stared at it long after the rain had soaked the streets. Somewhere out there, someone was watching. Someone wanted to see how far I could go. And I realized this was only the beginning. The next day, I would act again. And what I did next would change everything. The ripple effect. The morning after the viral post, the city felt different. Not louder, not busier, but somehow charged, like it was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. I woke up to my phone vibrating relentlessly. Messages, emails, notifications flooding in. The story I had shared wasn't just circulating, it was multiplying. People I didn't know were sharing their own experiences of being underestimated, ignored, and dismissed. Each post carried a spark, a tiny rebellion against a world that had tried to make us invisible. But with attention came scrutiny. The first call came from a local news producer. "Michael, we want to cover your story. Are you available for an interview?" I hesitated. Could I trust them? Or was this another way to twist my words, make me appear foolish or angry? But before I could respond, another message arrived, this time from an unknown number. "They're watching. Be careful who you trust." Not everyone wants the truth to come out. The warning should have scared me. It did, briefly. But it also fueled something deeper, a determination I hadn't known I possessed. I realized that fear could either paralyze me or propel me forward, and I chose to move forward. I agreed to the interview. Sitting in the small, crowded studio, the lights were blinding, the cameras intrusive. The anchor began asking questions, some soft, some sharp. "Some people are saying you overreacted when the millionaire called you useless," she said, leaning forward. "Wasn't this just words?" I took a breath. Words have power. They shape how we see ourselves and how the world sees us. If a single insult can make someone feel worthless, imagine how countless small dismissals throughout a lifetime can crush a person's spirit. I refuse to let that continue. Not for me, not for anyone else. The interview aired later that day. By evening, social media was ablaze. Hashtags multiplied. People were talking, debating, organizing. It was bigger than I had imagined. Then the backlash came. Anonymous calls, threatening emails. Even someone tampered with my apartment door lock. Someone was watching, but I didn't know who. The messages became more frequent, more direct. "Stop before it's too late. You don't know who you're dealing with. Some fires burn too hot to survive." I realized this wasn't just about the millionaire anymore. Whoever was behind these messages wanted to control the narrative, to intimidate anyone who tried to challenge them. But instead of retreating, I decided to escalate. I started organizing small community meetings, sharing stories of resilience, and gathering evidence of discrimination, corruption, and injustice. Slowly, our network grew. People who had been silenced for too long now had a platform. They weren't just sharing stories. They were strategizing, mentoring, helping each other rise. One evening, while walking home from a meeting, I noticed someone following me. At first, I thought it was paranoia, but the footsteps were deliberate, echoing mine too closely. I ducked into a narrow alley, heart pounding, and watched as a man in a dark coat slowed, pretending to check his phone. "Who are you?" I demanded, stepping forward. He raised his hands. "Relax. I'm not here to hurt you." "Then why are you following me?" "I'm here to help," he said. "You've started something, but you're in over your head. I narrowed my eyes. Help? How? And who sent the warning messages? He hesitated. I can't tell you everything. But there's a network, people with influence, power, connections, and they're watching you. They've underestimated you so far, but they're learning fast. You need allies you can trust completely. I weighed his words. Could I trust him? Could I trust anyone anymore? All right, I said finally. Tell me what I need to know. Over the next week, he helped me navigate the growing storm. We mapped threats, identified potential allies, and built a strategy to expand the network safely. Each day, the movement grew, gaining followers, supporters, and those hungry for change. But the pressure was relentless. My personal life began to unravel. Friends who couldn't understand the danger distanced themselves. Family members worried, and sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. And then came the first direct attack. One morning, I arrived at my apartment to find the door ajar. Papers scattered across the floor, drawers ransacked. Nothing was stolen, but the message was clear. Someone had been inside. I froze. Every instinct screamed danger, but I had already crossed a point of no return. Instead of fleeing, I doubled down. I installed security measures, encrypted communications, and continued the work. The network couldn't stop. Not now. Then Megan appeared. I met her at a small cafe, away from prying eyes. She had been part of another movement, someone who understood the stakes, the risks, and the power of organized voices. She brought with her files, evidence of corruption, injustice, and exploitation tied to influential figures, including the millionaire who had insulted me. This is why they're targeting you, she said, voice low but urgent. It's not just about what was said in the boardroom. You've stumbled into something bigger. They're protecting their power. I swallowed hard, realizing the movement I had ignited was now entwined with forces I didn't fully understand. Powerful people with resources, influence, and a willingness to eliminate threats. We'll need a plan, I said. We can't just fight blindly. They'll crush anyone who steps in our way. Megan nodded. I know, and we'll need to be smart. Every post, every meeting, every action has to be calculated. That night, as I lay awake, I realized the enormity of what we had started. A single insult, a single word, had sparked a movement that could topple long-standing structures of power, but it had also painted a target on my back. I knew one thing for certain. There was no turning back. The following morning, another message appeared on my phone. You've gone too far. They're coming for you and everyone you've gathered. Make your next move carefully. I stared at it for a long moment. Fear rose, but determination overpowered it. I had seen what silence could do to people like me. I had witnessed what inaction could cause. And now, I had a choice, retreat into safety or step fully into the storm and face the consequences. I chose the storm, because the movement was bigger than me, bigger than the millionaire, and it had the power to change everything. Weeks passed. Our network expanded, gaining members in cities across the country. Journalists reached out, investigative teams began asking questions, and social media amplified every story. But with every victory came new dangers. We were being watched, our communications monitored, threats escalated, and the pressure intensified. Then one evening, Megan handed me a small, unmarked envelope. Inside was a single photograph. A man I recognized from a meeting weeks ago, a member of our network, standing with someone I knew I could not trust. On the back, a line written in cold ink. Not everyone who smiles with you is on your side. I looked up at her, the weight of realization settling in. We're being infiltrated. I said. She nodded. It was only a matter of time. But we're ready. And if we act smart, we can turn this against them. I clenched my fists. The storm was coming, and this time, it would be unlike anything we had faced before. The next move had to be perfect. And what I did next would change everything. Into the eye of the storm. The city was quiet that night, but the silence felt like the calm before a hurricane. I sat at my apartment desk. The photograph Megan had given me lying flat in front of me. The face of someone we had trusted. Now a threat. I traced the edges of the paper, trying to process what it meant. This changes everything, Megan said, pacing behind me. Her voice was tense but controlled. We have a mole in our network. someone feeding information to them. If we don't act carefully, everything we've built could collapse. I leaned back, eyes fixed on the glowing skyline outside my window. Fear gnawed at me, but determination had overtaken it long ago. Then we set a trap, I said. We give them the illusion of control, but we lead them exactly where we want them. Megan nodded, a flicker of a smile crossing her face. Exactly. And this time, we won't underestimate them. We've learned. We've grown. We're ready. The plan was risky. We split the network into two streams. One public, to keep the movement alive and attract attention. The other covert, to track the mole and uncover the larger conspiracy. Every message, every meeting, every post was calculated. We started with the mole. Using the digital trail he or she had left, we set up a series of false leads. Every interaction we allowed them to observe was carefully staged, designed to draw them out without revealing our true intentions. Days passed and tension mounted. Megan and I barely slept, communicating in whispers and coded messages. The mole was patient, clever, and dangerous, but we were learning to anticipate each move. Then came the first real confrontation. It was a rainy night when the message arrived. Meet me, alone, midnight, abandoned warehouse, East 12th Street. The mole or someone else testing us? I didn't hesitate. I knew every moment counted. Megan insisted I go alone. If they recognize me, she said, it could compromise everything. You have to lure them without risking yourself. I grabbed my coat, the rain already soaking my sleeves by the time I reached the warehouse. Shadows stretched long across the cracked concrete, fog curling along the walls. And then I saw him, the mole, casual, confident, a small smirk on his lips. He didn't reach for a weapon, but the tension was palpable. You're persistent, he said. I have to admit, I didn't expect you to survive this long. I didn't flinch. I'm not done, and you're about to find out just how far we prepared. The confrontation escalated quickly. He lunged at me, a knife glinting in the dim light. I dodged, grabbing a nearby pipe and swinging it with all my strength. The sound of metal against metal echoed through the warehouse. He rolled, pulled out his phone, and pressed something, a signal. Within seconds, shadows moved in. More men, masked and armed, surrounding me from all sides. I backed up, heart racing, scanning the room for an escape. And then I heard Megan's voice, calm, commanding, amplified from a small speaker she had planted earlier. You're surrounded by your own lies, she said. Every move you've made has been calculated. Every trail you followed has led here. The men hesitated. Confusion flickered in their eyes. Michael, Megan continued, we know everything, and now the world is watching. At that moment, sirens wailed in the distance. A coordinated leak of evidence had reached news channels, law enforcement, and activists simultaneously. The walls of conspiracy trembled as the public caught wind of the operation. Chaos erupted. The mole tried to flee, but I tackled him, twisting his arm until he dropped the knife. He struggled, but Megan and I moved in unison, restraining him. The other men hesitated, uncertain, giving us just enough time to escape into shadows. Outside, the rain poured, soaking us to bone. I looked at Megan, her eyes fierce, yet glowing with a sense of victory. We did it, I said, breathing heavily. For now, she replied. They'll regroup. They always do. Over the next days, the network continued to grow. Evidence of corruption, exploitation, and harassment flowed in from sources across the city, the country, and eventually the globe. Journalists, activists, and citizens amplified every story, creating pressure that North Axis, the conglomerate and network behind the attacks, could not ignore. But the danger never truly disappeared. I began noticing signs. Cars parked outside my building, unfamiliar faces watching from cafes, anonymous messages slipped under doors. Someone, somewhere, was still observing, still plotting. Megan and I strengthened our defenses, encrypted communications, and coordinated our next moves. Every action was deliberate, precise, and calculated. And then the call came. A distorted voice, electronic and cold. You think you've won? You've only begun. You have no idea what's coming. The line went dead before I could respond. I sat in silence, feeling the weight of the warning, but also a renewed sense of purpose. We had faced the storm, survived the first wave, and struck back. But this was only the beginning. That night, I looked out over the city from my apartment window. The lights blurred through the rain, reflections shimmering like fractured mirrors. I thought about every insult, every dismissal, every time I'd been called useless. And I realized something vital. It didn't matter what others called me. It didn't matter how powerful they thought they were. I was not useless. I was resilient. I was unstoppable. And what we did next would not just shock the millionaire who had called me worthless. It would change everything for us, for our movement, and for anyone who had ever been underestimated. The next morning, a new message arrived on my phone. The next move will decide everything. Be ready. I looked at Megan. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes reflected the same determination I felt. We're ready, I said. She nodded. Then let's make sure the world remembers who we are. The last stand. The city was alive, pulsing with lights and whispers. But for Megan and me, the world felt narrower than ever. Every step we took, every message we sent, every move we made was calculated, precise, yet the tension never eased. We had survived the first wave of attacks, exposed the corruption of the millionaire and his network, and mobilized a movement that the world had noticed. But now, we were no longer just disruptors. We were marked targets. The warning had come through again, anonymous, digital, almost casual. The next move would decide everything. Fail, and it won't just be you who suffers. I felt the weight of those words. Every ally we had could be at risk. Every step we miscalculated could unravel everything we had fought for. Megan stood beside me, eyes steady, exuding a quiet confidence. We've survived worse, she said. And now, it's time to finish what we started. Our plan had been meticulous. We had gathered irrefutable evidence, mapped the corrupt network, and identified every weak point. Tonight, we would deliver the final blow, a coordinated release of files, testimonies, and media coverage that would expose not only the millionaire, but every figure connected to his network, ensuring they could no longer hide in shadows. We arrived at the abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts of the city, our temporary command center. Rain-slicked streets reflected the neon lights, and the distant hum of traffic masked the quiet storm building inside. Inside, Megan and I worked side by side, sending encrypted communications to journalists, activists, and trusted allies. The files we had collected over months were being uploaded simultaneously to secure servers, set to go live at precisely 11:11 p.m. Timing is everything, Megan said, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Once this goes live, there's no turning back. I nodded, heart pounding. Every second stretched endlessly. Outside, shadows moved, but we couldn't afford to be distracted. Every noise, every flicker of light could signal the arrival of someone determined to stop us. At 10:55 p.m., a single alert pinged on my device. Someone was approaching. Not just anyone. Our mole, the traitor we had been tracking for weeks. They had come for one last attempt to sabotage us. We didn't panic. Instead, we initiated the trap we had prepared. Our security protocols locked down entrances. Cameras recorded every angle, and the moment they crossed the threshold, they would be exposed to the world. The mole entered, smirking, confident. "You think you've won," they said. "This isn't over. You've stirred a hornet's nest you can't contain." I stepped forward, voice calm, eyes steady. This isn't about winning or losing. This is about truth. And truth doesn't bow to fear. Megan pressed a button. Monitors lit up across the room, revealing every action the mole had taken. Every meeting, every betrayal, every attempt to undermine our network. Simultaneously, live feeds went out to journalists worldwide. The mole's movements, their identity, and their network were broadcast in real time. Chaos erupted. The mole tried to flee, but our security team, pre-positioned and coordinated, intercepted them. Authorities were alerted. Journalists began to converge, and the web of corruption started to unravel before our eyes. Megan, and I barely had time to breathe. "It's working," she whispered, though the tension in her voice betrayed the underlying danger. "But they'll come back. There's always another wave." I nodded, knowing she was right. We had struck a decisive blow, but the war was far from over. Our names, our faces, and our actions would now be known to every powerful figure who had once operated in the shadows. Days passed, the city buzzing with revelations. Resignations, investigations, and public outrage swept across the nation. Our movement gained momentum, attracting new allies and supporters, but also intensifying the threats. We lived under constant vigilance, our lives no longer private, our every move scrutinized. One evening, a small envelope arrived at my door. Inside, a single photograph. Megan, smiling faintly, holding a sign with a message written in bold letters. "The story isn't finished. Stay vigilant. Trust no one completely." Beneath it, a note. "They are regrouping. They are stronger in the shadows. But you now know the power of truth. Use it wisely." I stared at it for a long time, letting the words sink in. Fear still lingered, but determination surged stronger. We had survived the worst, exposed the most dangerous people, and ignited a movement that couldn't be silenced. Megan returned from a secure location shortly after. "We've done something no one expected," she said. "But the final chapter isn't written. The network isn't gone. It's adapting. We've won battles, but not the war." I nodded, feeling the weight of our journey. The insult, the dismissal, the constant danger, all of it had led to this moment. Every person who had ever been called useless had their voice amplified through our work. Every injustice we had uncovered had been brought into the light, but the world was far from perfect. Corruption and power never disappear. They shift, mutate, and wait. That night, we stood together on a rooftop overlooking the city. Rain fell softly, glistening on the pavement below. Neon lights shimmered through the mist, reflecting the chaos and resilience of the streets. I looked at Megan. "Do you think it's enough?" She shook her head. "Enough? No, but it's a start. And the start is all anyone ever truly has." I smiled faintly. "Then we keep going." Somewhere beyond the city, shadows moved, silent and watching. New threats were forming, new challenges waiting. But we were no longer the same people who had been underestimated, insulted, and dismissed. We were prepared. We were unstoppable. And as the rain soaked our coats and the lights flickered below, I realized a truth that had guided me from the beginning. I am not useless. I am unbreakable.